In early 2013, the Department of Public Works tabulated a draft for the expropriation of land bill. The bill seeks to provide for the expropriation of property for public purpose or in the public interest. This is subject to just and equitable compensation. The proposed law was first introduced in 2008, but was later withdrawn after clauses that removed the rights of landowners to approach the courts were criticized for being unconstitutional. A later version of the draft bill recognizes the influence of the courts in expropriation matters. The amendment bill sets a new deadline for land claims to December 2018. The previous deadline was the end of 1998. The economic freedom fighters rejected the reopening of land claims by President Jacob Zuma. The party voiced its unhappiness with the Restitution of Land Rights Amendment Bill, saying the law supports an unethical, inefficient and expensive process.
Now, to discuss the Land Restitution Bill, we're now joined by the EFF's Andile Mngxitama, and from Agri SA, we're joined by Dr. Theo de Jager. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, Andile, just to start with you, we know that the first cardinal pillar of the EFF is to expropriate land without compensation. Can you just take us through how exactly that would work?
There are basically two main arguments for land redistribution without compensation. The first is a historical one. Land in South Africa is stolen property. 1652 arrival of Jan van Riebeeck and his men and the mayhem that they caused throughout our country. All of it was about taking land by force, turning black people, Africans, into workers and slaves in mines and kitchens and so on. So there's a historical question. There is no dispute about this question, that land in South Africa is historically stolen, and the whole liberation struggle was about resolving this question. So how do you buy back stolen property? That's the first. And there is an economic argument as well, that agriculture in South Africa contributes less than 5% to the GDP. It has not resolved the issues of food security in terms of feeding our people. And it is environmentally even degrading. So there are two main reasons for this. We have not heard up to now why should land be bought. Why? There is no economic, political, ethical reason for that. And for the EFF, it's a very simple matter. All land should belong to the state, and those who need land, both black and white, will apply. In a licensing type situation where 25 years you will have the use of land after having said why you need that land. And how you get it is as easy as a grant. You fill in a form, I need land for this following reason. The state provides that land and provides support to make sure that you don't fail. It is not a complicated matter at all. It is just the problem we've had up to now is one of cowardice on the basis of the ruling party. 20 years later, only 8% of the land has been bought for about 50 billion rand. That money could have been used differently. And we are not even talking about the conditions of farm workers who remain slaves, landless, and they are primary producers in this country. For EFF, they will be part of the legitimate beneficiaries of land redistribution. And then we are done with the historical question of white supremacy, racism, antagonism, apartheid, and so on. We have the land back, we move on, we create a different society.
Now, Dr. de Jager, moving to you, as Agri SA, are you satisfied with the current government's approach to land reform?
No, we are not. We feel there is nothing wrong with our constitution when it comes to the redistribution and restitution of land. We have a very solid constitution. There's nothing wrong with the laws governing either redistribution or restitution. We have good laws. The crisis is with the implementation of it. As Andile has said, 20 years later, and they've spent 77 billion rand. They've already spent half of the total value, market value of land, and yet only about 7% have been transferred. We say the problem was not with the willing seller principle, it was with an incompetent buyer.
Right now, Dr. de Jager mentioned the Constitution. Can you please take us through the process of changing the Constitution? Because I know as the EFF, you approached government in terms of using part of your 6% in changing the Constitution. Can you just briefly take us through that?
We have to be clear about the foundational question, and that is land theft. Land property is stolen property, land in South Africa. Once you accept this proposition, then you say, what is the mechanism to redress? Which is going to make sure that you don't perpetuate this theft by buying stolen property? We say Section 25, as it is currently structured, does not allow for expropriation without compensation. It allows for expropriation, but with compensation. And if that happens, of course, ultimately you will pay more or less the market-related prices, which would not work for the kinds of arguments that we're putting forward. The unfortunate thing is this. The ANC has not even tested the limits of its own policy within the Constitution, because it has not gone out and be aggressive to use its own policies, which we believe are based on the wrong premise, because they don't take care of these historical questions that we put forward. So we have said, nevertheless, 20 years later, let us correct this matter. Together, let us be national leaders who deal with the historical question, and we have a 2/3 majority to amend Section 25. We expropriate land without compensation. We finish this question. This question, land question, must be dealt with, and speedily. We can't drag it any much longer.
Now, Dr. Jager, would you say that the willing seller, willing buyer approach is sustainable? I'm saying this because sellers aren't always willing to let go of their land.
No, sellers are not always willing to let go of their land. They are highly productive, internationally competitive farms. And those farmers might not be willing to sell. And there's nothing wrong with it, because Andile's founding principle, his point of departure, is fundamentally wrong. No land was stolen. If white people in South Africa stole land from black people, then black people, for their very same argument, stole the land from the Khoisan. Land was not stolen by nobody.
Who did
The
you buy it
farms,
from?
can I just finish, please? This is not Parliament.
Finish.
The total value of land in South Africa today, if government would today buy all the farms at market value, they would pay 189 billion rand. But 104 billion of that is tied up in bonds. That is what farmers are still owing the banks for the land they bought. And on top of that, another 84 billion rand had been spent in the last year on inputs. That is production loans. That's not bonds on land. So every farmer in this country can, if Andile's dreams would come true, lose a farm or two. But it's the banks, the financial institutions, which will lose all our farms.
So you're basically
and
saying
the
it's
whole
not
financing
sustainable.
structure will collapse. Where will that take us?
Now, earlier on, we asked our viewers what their take on this is, and a few of them replied, and I just want to take you through them. We've got Patrick Toto, who says land expropriation is the way. Millions of black people are living in shacks in big cities because they can't afford living there. And Kate Kopaloyi says, let the people using land share the benefits with the owner. There's only one farm in Cape Town where the workers and the owner are happy. Henry Dube says, people should buy land and not be given on a silver platter. Olani Ngwekazi says they stole our land from us, so how can we buy it back with millions? And lastly, we've got Itumeleng Mulawusi, who says, let them share the land 50-50 and let the land claims process be quicker and fair to everyone. Now, I mean, you've mentioned some of the economic reasons why you say, you know, it's not sustainable. But looking at the EFF's approach to this, some people compare it to Zimbabwe's land reform one, which has been heavily criticized. Can you take us through the differences just briefly?
Yeah, but they should be going to China, they should be going to Southern Korea, they should be going to Cuba, they should be going to Bolivia, they should be going to Venezuela. All of these countries have undertaken massive land redistribution, most of them without compensation. We're not talking about something which has not happened historically. And look at those economies, even Japan, by the way, 1945, to build an economy that is sustainable, where inequalities are reduced, you have to necessarily massively redistribute land, and this is what we're going to do. But let me also deal with this question. This idea that the Khoisan are not Africans and are not black, and black people stole from them, it is a racist, white supremacist, historical distortion, a lie and an insult by people who have decimated the Khoisan through genocide and have not paid reparations, or in fact have not accepted the responsibility for that. The Khoisan must be firstly get reparations, and secondly, it must be understood the Khoisans are just like a Xhosa group or a Pedi group. They are Africans from this continent, and we could not steal from ourselves. And these beneficiaries of genocide to come and talk like this is a further insult, but they can do that because they own our land, our stolen property. To deal with white arrogance and white supremacy, we have to take land just like they did in Zimbabwe, and white people will become good citizens who do not have.
Let me just stop you there. Just before we close, can you just come in there and just briefly in closing?
A farm is much more than just a piece of land. The problem with the current land reform program is that we have reduced too many farms to just a piece of land again. More than 50% of all the farms which have been transferred in restitution in Gauteng has been abandoned by the new owners. Of the new claims that came in since the reopening of redistribution, 95% of the claimants claim financial compensation, because farming is not just another business which takes care after itself. It's a highly competitive, high-tech international market that needs to be addressed. And in Andile's argument, he's actually against agriculture as such, as if South Africa was not up to now a self-sufficient country. We are not only self-sufficient, we are a net exporter of food. And only 35,000 commercial farmers today feed 50 billion people, a ratio of one farmer to feed 1,500 people 3 times a day, 365 days per year. Nowhere in the world can they achieve that. Our dream is that black farmers start to enter the commercial arena and start to make profits from the land they get restituted all through redistribution, and not be dumped into poverty again by just putting them on a piece of land.
All right, so I'm going to have to stop you there. Clearly the land reform debate is one that needs to be taken further, but thank you so much for joining us on Your World.
Thank you.
Okay.
Land reform is clearly a hot debate, but we'll take it further, hopefully, on another day. Now, a look at your